And now, the best of Ben Fordham Live.
G'day there, it's Wednesday, October 27. Ben Fordham with you. Great to have your company. How's this for a stuff-up? There is a criminal on the run after he was granted bail against police wishes. So what did he do? Cut off his ankle bracelet and jumped on a private jet and got the hell out of here. We will catch up with the New South Wales Police Minister, David Elliott, who is furious. Also, Prime Minister Scott Morrison on net zero. We'll catch up with the PM before he goes to Glasgow and try and make sense of how all of this is going to work and what's it going to cost you. HSC exams are due to go ahead with compulsory mask rules, but not if Nikki has anything to do with it. She's the mum of an HSC student. We are negotiating with the Premier behind the scenes. We'll see if we can get some common sense on that front. And Adam Gilchrist will be here from the UK. Some worrying news out of Buckingham Palace about the health of the Queen. So we'll check in with Adam. And, of course, Harley Carnes will be here from the US. That and plenty more. The show starts now.
Ben Fordham Comments. Brought to you by Lexus of Parramatta. The showroom is now open. And Sydney, it's your time to experience luxury at Lexus of Parramatta.
Since ICAC started last week, there have been good days and bad days for Gladys Berejiklian. Yesterday was a bad day. We've had days of overblown media headlines about the evidence when, in fact, there was no substantial proof provided against her. But there's no escaping the fact that yesterday was a shocker for Gladys Berejiklian. There's still no allegation of corruption, but her credibility has taken a hit in the last 24 hours. I've been providing daily commentary after watching the evidence given at ICAC, and every time I've said the same thing. We need to hold off on making any big calls because you never know what's coming. So far, there's been no bombshell to suggest that Gladys Berejiklian was acting corruptly, and that's still the case, with a week of hearings remaining. But ICAC being ICAC, it's not just about corruption. It's also other issues like conflicts of interest and perceptions of wrongdoing. Yesterday we didn't hear about corruption, but we did hear evidence that damaged the former Premier's credibility. And the reason it was damaging related to who it came from. Sarah Cruikshank gave testimony. She was the Chief of Staff when Gladys Berejiklian was the Premier. She told ICAC about a call she received from the boss one night in 2018. It was a Friday night. It was the day that Daryl Maguire had just been sensationally outed by ICAC. Maguire was caught on a phone tap trying to get a kickback through a property deal involving Canterbury Council. So Sarah Cruikshank was out socialising on the Friday night. The phone rang. It was the boss. Gladys Berejiklian was in a state of shock about what had just been revealed at ICAC. And the Premier revealed something critical to Sarah Cruikshank. She'd previously dated Daryl Maguire, the bloke who'd just been busted at ICAC. Sarah Cruikshank says that Gladys was bringing her in the loop in case anyone had ever spotted the two of them out together. And you can understand why the Premier was worried, because all of a sudden this little-known MP from Wagga Wagga was all over the news, and Gladys was aware that someone somewhere might have spotted the two of them at a restaurant or a cafe or somewhere else. She was preparing her Chief of Staff just in case. The love affair was a secret, and the Premier certainly wasn't making it public. She didn't declare it to the ICAC or, as far as we know, to anyone else. That's the first error that Gladys Berejiklian made. This was the moment that she could have acted to come clean and cover her backside. But she didn't. She could have gone to ICAC and said, look, there's something you need to know. She could have said something like, look, I don't have any evidence of this person being corrupt, but I want to declare a personal relationship just in case. She should have broken up with him on the spot. I suppose hindsight's a wonderful thing. But there was another mistake she made that Friday night. When she called Sarah Cruikshank, she didn't tell the full story. Sarah Cruikshank says during that call, Gladys Berejiklian told her that the relationship with Maguire happened before she was the Premier, when in fact it was still happening. If you're revealing a secret this big to your most trusted advisor and friend, you may as well go the whole hog. According to Sarah Cruikshank, she didn't. And Sarah would have no reason to lie about this. There's nothing to be gained in her misrepresenting that conversation. And she's got enormous regard for Gladys Berejiklian. And she's certain that the then Premier told her the relationship with Daryl Maguire was not a current one.
do you accept, Ms Cruikshanks, that having regard to your experience of her and the integrity with which she conducts herself, that it is a possibility that you did misunderstand the time frame around which she was speaking?
No, she was categorically clear with me. It was before she was Premier.
So there was no misunderstanding, Sarah said. Her boss was claiming the relationship was an old one, a historical one, before she was Premier. Sarah would later learn that that wasn't true. At the time of the call, it was current and it was ongoing. The relationship, that is, between Daryl and Gladys. The worst part is it kept on going and going and going. She was seeing him in 2018 when he was first busted by ICAC. She was seeing him in 2019 and she was seeing him in 2020. It only came to an end when Daryl was busted again by the ICAC, and this time Gladys was dragged into it. The fact is she had multiple opportunities to cut him loose and she didn't. Love and loyalty can make us do some crazy things. Gladys Berejiklian is guilty of terrible judgment and a shocking lack of transparency. Does that mean she's corrupt? No. But it's a bad look. There's no escaping that. And she will walk away from ICAC with a few bruises. Too many of her colleagues have stated that she should have been honest with them about Daryl Maguire. Her judgment failed her. But there's a difference between a failure to come clean and corrupt behaviour. When all of this started, we said here that this would come down to a simple question. Did Daryl Maguire get any special treatment from Gladys Berejiklian because of their personal relationship? That has not been established. Pork barrelling, rushing through funding grants, going against the advice of certain advisors, this stuff happens all the time. It comes down to whether or not Daryl Maguire got VIP treatment when the Premier was handing out taxpayers' funds. Her critics will say, yes, that's what happened. But the majority of those who've given evidence say it did not happen that way. One by one, they've lined up and defended the funding in question and defended the character of Gladys Berejiklian. This is how one former advisor, Neil Harley, put it yesterday.
I have never, ever, in my time in politics, known a person more committed, more fiercely committed to public service and serving the people of the state than Ms Berejiklian. I cannot recall a single occasion when Ms Berejiklian raised with me either Mr Maguire or the Wagga Wagga electorate. Not a single occasion.
I think most people trust that Gladys Berejiklian was honest in the way that she spent taxpayers' money. I don't think there's anyone out there who really thinks she's corrupt. But even some of her most trusted advisors and colleagues say she was dishonest in the way she handled her personal life. And that's what's landed her in trouble. She should have broken up with him. She should have declared the relationship. She should have thrown him under a bus. I know that that last part is ruthless, but so is politics. Again, we will wait and see what ICAC comes up with over the next few days. Thursday will be crucial when Daryl Maguire gives evidence. He's got no motivation to protect his ex-girlfriend. And Gladys Berejiklian will give evidence on Friday and again on Monday. If there's no big bombshell still to come, many will question why we lost our Premier. But in politics, perception matters. You don't just have to do the right thing, you have to be seen to be doing the right thing. Gladys Berejiklian's ability to keep secrets made her a rock-solid colleague and workmate. But it was her own secret that brought her undone. Feedback on Gladys Berejiklian. This one comes from Michael in Chatswood. He says Gladys's relationship may have been over when she said that, but then they later patched things up. And then you got Jay saying, if Gladys knew Daryl was up to no good and didn't report it, doesn't that make her corrupt? Well, there's no suggestion that she knew that he was up to no good. I mean, she would have had a bit of a clue when he was busted at ICAC trying to get kickbacks involving a property deal at Canterbury Council. But by that stage, he was already exposed. When it comes to his behaviour in the New South Wales Parliament, everyone who's given evidence at ICAC has said that they had absolutely no idea that Daryl Maguire was corrupt. Aggressive, yes. Abusive, yes. A pain in the arse, absolutely. Corrupt, well, there hasn't been anyone who's gone before ICAC saying, oh, yeah, no, we knew he was corrupt. Because, of course, they would all have a duty to report such a thing. Our number 131873. Some great news this morning. From today, fully vaccinated Aussies will be able to book a flight overseas without needing an exemption. 9 News reporter Chris O'Keefe broke the news with us this morning. We still can't fly until November 1, but from today you won't need to show the airline that you've got an exemption to leave the country. You just have to show the airline that you're fully vaccinated. The Health Minister, Greg Hunt, made the change last night. Children under 12 are also able to fly under this rule, as well as people who can't get vaccinated for medical reasons. This comes after Aussies were having issues booking flights, even though the flight was after November 1. That's because they were still being asked by the airline for proof of an exemption. So you no longer need an exemption. Unvaccinated people will still have to get an exemption if they wish to travel overseas. David says, do you know how long it takes to get your Medicare vaccine record updated? I had my second jab last week and it's still not updated. Look, David, it can take up to 10 days. If it hasn't been updated within 10 days, you can talk to your vaccine provider or call the Australian Immunisation Register on 1-800-653-809. 1-800-653-809. The rapid antigen tests are coming to supermarkets from next week. David says rapid antigen tests are free in the UK. Why are we having to pay? Victoria says, I wonder if border security will accept at-home tests before travelling. Now, to net zero. This is obviously the big issue of the day, of the week, of the month, possibly of the year. And the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, is live on the line from Parliament House, Canberra. Good morning to you, PM.
G'day, Ben.
Thank you for talking to us. I think we all want to support anything we can do to help the planet, net zero. The question is how and when and at what price. So how much will net zero by 2050 cost the average voter in Western Sydney?
Well, the Low Emissions Technology Plan costs us $20 billion investing in the technology which is going to continue to change the world and which is going to get electricity prices down, keep powering our industries. And we've got to develop those new technologies, whether it's in hydrogen, ultra-low-cost solar, energy storage at much more cheaper rates, and an important one, soil carbon measurement. We want to get that down to $3 per hectare. One of the reasons why we need to get the encouragement to improve those pastures is to ensure that you can measure these things at an affordable cost. So this is just a very practical plan. A very practical plan which says you don't have to punish Australians. You don't have to make Australians feel guilty about what their jobs are. They can keep doing their jobs. They don't have to face higher taxes or more regulation. We can get there with the way we're already getting there because our emissions are already down by 20% and our economy's up by 45%.
PM, you're claiming that the average Australian will be $2,000 a year better off by 2050, but that's pie in the sky stuff. You haven't released the modelling. You don't know if these technologies are going to effectively replace coal and gas or whether they will lead to an increase in the price of electricity. The UK is experiencing record electricity prices at the moment because of green levies. So how can you claim that Aussies will be better off?
Because we're not doing green levies. We're not doing taxes. We're not putting the mandates on people. We're not shutting down anything. We're not going to stop digging anything up. We're not going to stop planting anything. That's what other countries are doing, and that's not what you have to do to get to net zero by 2050. We've already got emissions down by 20% without doing any of those things. And so I think there's two myths here, Ben. One is that you have to go and punish Australians and end rural and regional life to hit net zero by 2050. That's not true. It's also not true that if you go and keep going down this path, that you're going to end things the other way. They're the extreme positions. None of those are true. What is true is if you take this middle course, keep developing the technology, enable people to get on with their livelihoods, we will get there. This is achievable. I mean, I'm sure people said that to Bill Gates and to Steve Jobs as well. But, you know, we didn't need a tax or a law to develop the iPhone or develop a COVID vaccine.
All right, when you talk about the new technology, you're banking on Australia getting to net zero based on this new technology that at the moment doesn't exist, and you're spending $20 billion doing it over the next decade, and you're presuming that this will lead to a return of up to $100 billion. Now, that sounds like some mates of mine who go to the racetrack and they have wishful thinking, okay, I'll go there with $20 and come back with 100.
Well, they mustn't have bought any Apple shares or Microsoft shares either. That technology has always solved this problem, Ben. We see it in our lives every single day. I tell you what, I trust technology far more than I trust government's taxes and higher regulation.
So if the technology doesn't work, then how do you get there? Do you get there by taxing people?
We will never do that. That is never going to be part of our plan. That's what's in our plan, that we will not do it with taxes. We will do it through technology investments.
Do you get there by banning things that we currently use?
No, we don't. You don't. That's what our plan doesn't do. We don't think you have to do that. You can get there by doing the things that take technology costs down, which get them as part of your economy, which enables you to move through what is going to be a challenging time, and you come out in front. That's what this shows.
Even though you're not banning coal, if you don't approve new ones or invest in current ones, I'm talking about coal-fired power plants, they'll die a slow death, won't they? Because coal mines are busier than ever. We can't export enough to meet demand at the moment. The price is through the roof. Do you reckon the chairman of Adani, who invested in Australia instead of other countries, would have the same confidence doing so today?
Yes, I do, because we're not shutting anybody down. And over time, and this is why we're building the gas-fired power plant up in Kurri Kurri. That's why we're doing it, because you need other fuels which will continue to be part of the mix for many, many years to come. See, we're not shutting anything down, Ben. Us committing to net zero by 2050 does not take away one job. In fact, it adds jobs. It doesn't add 1 cent to a power price. It doesn't do any of those things. It ensures that our mining and agricultural industries continue to go forward. I mean, countries overseas, Ben, in Korea and Japan and China and other places, they're going to make a whole bunch of decisions over the next 30 years, and we'll have to respond to that. We can't control their decisions, but we're not going to go and punish Australia and shut Australia down just to keep some people overseas happy. I'm not going to do that.
So just on that, when the UN warns Australia that we have to urgently cut coal by 2030, which is up to $50 billion worth of exports a year for Australia, Boris Johnson is praising you, saying that Scott Morrison made a difficult decision given Australia's reliance on coal and fossil fuels. So that sounds like he thinks that we're going to rapidly phase out coal.
Well, we're not doing that. And that's not our plan. I mean, what will happen across all sectors? I mean, technology changes, global economies change over time, but I'm not going to force any of that. I mean, the global economy will set many things in place, and that's why it's important, I think, for us to have this target, because there's going to be hundreds of billions of dollars, Ben, invested in these clean energy technology supply chains, and Australia can really benefit from that. Critical minerals, rare earths, the manufacturing opportunities that come from that. And I'm not going to have Australia shut out from that. And that's what this plan also opens us up to, because we know what's happening around the world. We can't pretend that's not happening. Australia not committing to net zero is not going to change any of that. I'm not just going to let it happen to Australia. We need a plan that can embrace that, can work with it, ensure we mitigate the negatives and achieve all the positives. But the myth that's been exposed by this work says you don't have to tax people and regulate people and shut people down to get the right results on emissions. Australians want us to take action on climate change, but they're not going to sell their livelihoods for it. And our plan, which is in the middle, enables us to achieve that.
Oh, look, don't get me wrong. We love hearing that there are no new taxes and we're not going to put people out of work. But there's not much about nuclear energy. You're saying that you're giving a commitment to monitor the development of small nuclear reactors, but that's a lot different to building one. Your data says our uranium exports could grow from $700 million to $1.3 billion annually by 2050. This is big business. You've got 32 countries who have nuclear energy. They want our stuff. It's clean, it's efficient, but we won't touch it here. So why are we more interested in technologies that don't currently exist instead of going nuclear?
Well, there's a moratorium on nuclear in Australia at the moment, and our policy...
But why?
Our policy has always been that unless there's bipartisan support for that, all you'll end up achieving is one big further fight and get nothing done.
But that suggests that you're scared of the opposition and you're not willing to step up to the fight.
I'm just saying, if you want to move forward, we've got the technologies which can get us to net zero now. So clean hydrogen, ultra-low-cost solar, energy storage, low-emission steel and aluminium, carbon capture and storage technology,
I've got that. But just on nuclear, you've never been afraid of a fight on other issues. Why are you afraid of this fight? Because you always mention, and so does Angus Taylor, the Labor Party will run a scare campaign.
Well, what I'm interested in is getting the job done and not handing the Labor Party some big stick which can distract everybody from what the job is we need to get done. The Labor Party is completely opposed to it. So if the Labor Party changes their mind on that, then that's something we can address at that point. But at this point, I'm not going to allow our plan to get distracted onto what the Labor Party wants to run as some sort of big scare campaign at the next election. I think that would be pretty pointless.
I should just let people know it's 7:30. We're just going to continue through the start of the news here, and I'll pick up the sports news with Amy Meehan in just a moment. PM, a few quick ones. China's responsible for 28% of the world's emissions. They've got 1,000 coal-fired power stations, about 100 more under construction. They're not turning up to Glasgow. They've got no interest in slowing down. So isn't this just going to increase their wealth, their power?
Well, this is why we are so opposed to the idea of these taxes and regulation. The only way any of this is going to change around the world, and not just in China, but in Indonesia, in Vietnam, in India, and we're working closely with India, is if we can crack the technologies, which means that we can all keep our jobs and get emissions down. And that's where I think the world has to focus now. All these going off to summits and all the rest of it, what really is only going to matter is if you get the technology which India can use, Vietnam can use, Indonesia can use, and indeed China.
Okay, just on the summit,
solve the problem.
Just on the summit, when you sit down and have a look at the menu in Glasgow, you're going to be offered either a beef burger or a mushroom burger. This is true, and there will be advice on the menu that the beef has 16 times more carbon emissions than the mushroom. So, do you want the mushroom or the beef?
I want the beef, and I hope it's Australian beef too.
Okay, just a couple of quick ones because we've got the sports news coming up. Can you confirm that from today you won't need proof of an exemption to book a flight from November 1 going overseas if you're fully vaccinated?
Yes, I can. We signed that off last night, and so that's in place now. And over 500,000 Australians have already downloaded their international vaccine certificate. So that's great news. The national plan opening up Australia is working. We now have a higher first dose vaccination rate in Australia than the United Kingdom.
Okay, and I've only got 30 seconds. Any thought to including rapid antigen testing through Medicare?
Not at this stage, but what I do know is that I understand from Monday you'll be able to get it at the chemist. So that's great too.
So we'll have to pay for it ourselves. No thought that we might get behind this from a federal government point of view to support people in undertaking those rapid antigen tests?
That's not our plan at the moment.
Okay. All right, PM, I appreciate you coming on the line. When are you taking off? Is it tomorrow or the next day?
Thursday night.
We really appreciate you jumping on the line.
And then to the other summit.
No worries. We'll talk to you when you get back.
As soon as I can.
And enjoy the beef. Don't be afraid of the mushroom, though. Good on you.
The burger.
All right, there you go. Prime Minister Scott Morrison.
Opinions that matter. News you can trust. This is Ben Fordham Live on Sydney's 2GB.
Well, the PM is under pressure to go nuclear. Unbelievable feedback about nuclear energy. Kevin says, nuclear power, please, PM. Jay says, rubbish, my power bill will triple. Anthony says, no nuclear means no net zero. Richard says the PM trusts technology and says it will solve the problem, yet he won't explore cleaner coal technology or nuclear. Embarrassing. Michael says, thank you, Prime Minister, please stay strong. Terry says he's lost me. Leonie says, extremely disappointed nuclear energy seems to be off the PM's table. Well, what I don't get is why people are afraid of the fight. You can have a listen there to the feedback on nuclear energy. People are saying it makes sense. We've got a third of the world's uranium here in Australia. We export it everywhere else, but we don't use it because there's a moratorium. And that's never stopped the Prime Minister from getting down and dirty on other issues when the Labor Party has held a position different to him. I mean, think about stop the boats. When the Labor Party held a very strong position to say, oh, no, we want to stop that policy. It was inhumane. It was cruel. And the then Minister, now Prime Minister Scott Morrison, said, stuff you, I know what's right. I'm going to back this in and I'm going to fight. And he won. And in the end, it was the Labor Party, through their then immigration spokesperson, Richard Marles, who convinced the then Labor leader, Bill Shorten, to backflip and say, OK, well, we better get on board. Why are you afraid of the nuclear fight? Now, Warren Mundine has called in. Warren, good morning to you.
Good morning. Mate, you're 100% right. It's what does the coalition government waits until the Labor Party agrees with something before they put a policy out there. If you're going to believe all the rhetoric that's coming out about a climate, catastrophe that's going to happen, that the planet's going to die, then why aren't they putting the stuff in place now? We've got the technology. We export it to all these other countries. How hypocritical of us. We export it to all these other countries. Britain's taking up nuclear again. So is Germany. China's doing nuclear. India's doing nuclear. Every other country in the world's doing nuclear except us. We look like a bunch of idiots.
Yeah, well, here's another message. PM, we've got to go nuclear. Show your strength now. And he hasn't been afraid of a fight in the past, Warren. I'm trying to work my way through the politics of all of this. Would he be thinking, hang on, I've got enough battles on my hands at the moment with net zero. I don't need another fight with the Labor Party over nuclear. But surely, if your argument's right, then you win the fight.
Well, he'll pull the coalition together, that's for sure, because I know the National Party wants to have nuclear. So if he wants to get away from a lot of the internal fighting within his party, then he just needs to go out there and say, at the next election, I'm going to put a nuclear on the agenda and let the Australian public decide on it. You know, I just find it, I'm like you, this guy was one of the toughest guys in regard to a lot of fights with the Labor Party. And all of a sudden he just comes up with this mealy mouth, you know, pretty gutless thing of, until the Labor Party agrees with it, we're not going to do it. They're never going to agree. So we're never going to have nuclear.
We always appreciate you listening, and even more so when you call in. Thanks, Warren.
Thanks a lot, Ben. Bye.
Warren Mundine, who, in case you missed it, just used the word gutless in relation to the failure to explore nuclear energy. Big trouble at the T20 Cricket World Cup. South Africa has taken the field this morning without their star player, Quinton de Kock. De Kock refused to play in their win over the West Indies after he was instructed to take part in the game's anti-racism movement supporting Black Lives Matter. We said yesterday this was going to be a problem, and it is. South Africa's first game of the tournament saw several players refusing to take a knee in support of BLM. About 4 players knelt. The rest were standing, some with their fist up, others with their arms behind their back. So it wasn't a united team. Several of the players from different parts of South Africa have indicated they don't want to take part in this. They don't want to get down on one knee. They don't want to support Black Lives Matter because we've seen what BLM represents. It might have started off as a movement about police brutality and racism, but then it quickly turned into rioting and looting and destroying everything in their path. The board of South African Cricket has now issued a directive requiring all players to take the knee. You've got to be kidding, don't you? Have a listen to the memo. Concerns have been raised with us over the different postures taken by team members in support of the Black Lives Matter initiative. The board feels that the team must be seen to take a united and consistent stand against racism, especially given South Africa's history. Therefore, the board has unanimously agreed to issue a directive requiring all Proteas players to adopt a consistent and united stance against racism by taking the knee at the World Cup. So it's take a knee or else. Can you believe this? Quinton de Kock is South Africa's star wicketkeeper and batsman. The team says he withdrew for personal reasons. Well, we know the reason. He didn't want to take the knee. He didn't want to be bullied. When asked previously why he didn't take the knee, de Kock said, and I quote, "I'll keep it to myself. It's my own personal opinion. No one is forced to do anything in life." Well, it appears they are being forced. If you don't want to take the knee, you don't play. It's unclear whether he will take any further part in the tournament, and the Australians should take note here. This is what happens when you bully people into doing something they don't believe in. Chris has called in. Good morning, Chris.
Morning, Ben. How you doing?
Doing well, Chris.
Ben, just calling in. I took a small issue with, I guess, your commentary on the South African Cricket Board and the Black Lives Matter movement, in particular, where you said that the Black Lives Matter movement quickly became about looting and destroying everything in its path. I guess a couple of things that I wanted to say is, one, I guess essentially the South African Cricket Board mandating that its players support the movement. If you want to equate it to, say, vaccination mandates, which are essentially about the greater good for humanity and eroding people's individual freedoms in support of something bigger than that and helping humanity as a whole, I'd argue that maybe this is also similar to that, where equality for disenfranchised peoples and essentially saying that one life is equal to that of all other lives is also for the greater good of humanity.
So I think what you're trying to say is that by forcing the players to take a knee, it's a bit like forcing people to take a vaccine?
I guess in one way. I guess more so just wanted to make a bit of commentary about, your strong rhetoric in terms of referring to it as bullying, etc. when...
I think that's what it is. If you say to people, you must do this, I think that is bullying. And in the case of vaccines, I mean, it's different because you're talking about a health issue as opposed to a political protest, and there's no doubt BLM was hijacked. That's why you had black business owners putting up signs saying, this is a black business, please don't burn it down. They returned the next morning and it was ashes.
Yeah, I understood, and obviously within any movement there are bad actors, but I guess that would be not dissimilar to equating radical Muslim fundamentalists and saying that, well, the entire Muslim belief system is about death to the West. At its heart, it's about equality for all.
I think we're probably conflating a few issues, but look, we can agree to disagree. I think we're disagreeing. We may be agreeing on other things. I can't quite work it all out, but I appreciate you calling in. And the bottom line is it's a political protest. And people shouldn't be forced to take part in a protest. A bit like you can choose to have the vaccine or not. Of course, if you're running a business or a major sport or an airline, you may think, all right, well, we want vaccines to safeguard this industry, this business, our future. When it comes to the protest, it's a protest. If you want to be part of it, be part of it. If you don't, you don't. Well, how did this happen? We have an alleged drug kingpin on the run after breaking off his electronic ankle bracelet. There are fears he's escaped Sydney on a private jet. His name is Mustafa Balouche, accused of helping to import almost 1,000 kilos of cocaine. The 33-year-old is facing a lengthy prison sentence, but despite the seriousness of the charges, he was granted bail on Friday, and this was against the advice of police. The magistrate, Michael Crompton, ordered him to wear an ankle bracelet, but that didn't work. The bracelet was found broken and discarded on the northern beaches on Monday, and by the time police arrived, he was gone. Police are now investigating if he boarded a late-night private jet at Bankstown Airport and escaped Sydney. Police are furious. David Elliott is the Police Minister. He's on the line. Minister, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ben.
Before we get to the court decision, any news on the whereabouts of Mustafa Balouche?
Oh, well, I've been briefed early this morning by both Commissioner Fuller and Superintendent Critchlow, and there's no update on his whereabouts, but and I'm certainly not going to be offering any false sense of security to the community that it's going to be an easy job for New South Wales Police. In fact, they're quite devastated. I mean, you understand policing isn't like any other vocation. There's a lot of work and a lot of emotional energy put into these things, and so they're devastated. But Superintendent Critchlow and the Commissioner have both told me that there are lines of inquiry. Rest assured that through the Australian Federal Police, we have contacted all of our international law enforcement partners, and we can't leave any stone unturned. But why we're here is what's infuriating me, and I'm yet to have a conversation with the Premier about it this morning, but I'm pretty sure I know what his tone is going to be. Because, quite frankly, this guy was our Pablo Escobar. This guy was part of an international racket with levels of drugs that we have quantities of drugs that we have never seen before, and the police expressly advised the court he is a bad guy. I mean, you would not be... He had a string of offences already, so we're not even talking about allegations anymore. He already had, and the court knew he had a number of criminal convictions under his belt.
Yeah, we were talking about 1,000 kilograms of cocaine, street value about $270 million, a record already, and facing a lengthy prison sentence. That's why police said, look, whatever you do, Magistrate Michael Crompton, don't give him bail. The magistrate thought he knew better.
That's right. And, I mean, if this was a mistake made by the police, I would be the first one onto your program apologising on behalf of the New South Wales Police Force. It's, the organisation I'm the Minister of makes mistakes as well. But, and there would be, as you well know, there would be peers of yours in the media and peers of mine in Parliament who would be screaming blue murder if this was a police stuff-up. But, I'm starting to get sick of these magistrates and judges, and I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but they just do not reflect, they don't consider the danger which police present to them seriously enough, and I don't think that they're reflecting the mood of the community that they're there to serve. And this is not the first time it's happened to the New South Wales Police in recent weeks, and I'm sick of having to remind the legal fraternity that we're not dealing with parking tickets here. We're dealing with international drug lords who are associated with things like terrorism, like kidnapping, like prostitution, but more importantly, they want our kids to take drugs which will kill them.
This guy could now be out of the country for all we know.
Well, he could be, but again, I'm not going to preempt the police line of inquiry. This will be a tough job for the New South Wales Police. Make no mistake. This is going to be a tough job to get this guy back. And we've got the technology, we've got the manpower, we've got the international law enforcement credentials, but of course we've also got to explain to some of those international law enforcement organisations how he was lost, because we've got
how embarrassing! How embarrassing! How should the magistrate Michael Crompton be feeling this morning?
Well, that's probably a question. I've got family listening to this program, Ben, so I'm not going to answer that question. But to say that I'm infuriated would be an understatement. To say that I'm so disappointed for the New South Wales Police would be an understatement. And these officers, the detectives, the crime squads that have been established, they work their guts out to keep our community safe. And to be let down by the system like this, and now we've just got to give them words of encouragement to say, listen, we know you've been screwed over, but unfortunately you've got to get up for work today, dust yourself off, and start all over again. Right. And you can imagine how infuriating that would be. It'd be like building the Taj Mahal and waking up in the morning to find out the thing had collapsed and starting all over again.
All right, let's hope they track him down once again, but we shouldn't be in this position, as you well know. Thanks for jumping on the line, David.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Ben.
David Elliott, the New South Wales Police Minister. I can answer the question for him. The magistrate, Michael Crompton, should be feeling stupid this morning because you had this guy before you. Police were saying, don't give him bail. As David Elliott just said, he's like the Pablo Escobar of Australia. 1,000 kilograms of coke, $270 million on the streets. They had him there in the courtroom and said, don't give him bail. But the magistrate thought he knew better, Michael Crompton. Instead, he said, no, I'll put an anklet bracelet on him. You may as well have said, look, go and sit on the front step. You trusted this guy. He's an accused drug kingpin, and now we've got absolutely no idea where he is. And just think of it from the police point of view. All of the man hours that go into an investigation like that, undercover, surveillance, getting all of the evidence ready, putting it before the court, establishing a case, and then whoosh, he's gone. 131873, the open line number. Now, we can reveal that police believe they've made a further breakthrough in their investigation into the murder of 16-year-old Jason Galligan. This is the young man who was murdered in Sydney's West earlier this year. On the 4th of August, 16 years of age, he was found unresponsive with injuries to his head and his chest in Doonside. He was taken to Westmead Hospital, where sadly he later died. Now, there are a lot of people involved in all of this, and obviously they will have their day in court. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. We've already stated previously that 8 people, aged between 13 and 32, have been charged. It's our information that police will reveal this morning a further 2 people have been charged. 1 male, 1 female. An 18-year-old man and a 36-year-old woman. The 18-year-old was arrested yesterday. He's been charged with concealing a serious indictable offence, murder. The 36-year-old woman has been charged with murder and other charges. Investigations by Strike Force Brenz are continuing. So that's now 10 people all up who have been charged over the fatal assault of young Jason, just 16 years of age. That information, I believe, will be confirmed by New South Wales Police this morning. Everyone innocent until proven otherwise. Well done to New South Wales Police. They have been working very, very hard on this case. Now, I'll get to more of your feedback on nuclear energy in just a moment because it's coming in thick and fast. But I just want to talk about HSC students who are being forced to wear masks during the exams. Now, I've got a feeling that there may be some good news for those HSC students. I think Dominic Perrottet was listening yesterday, and I think he's going to be having a fresh look at this issue. And as someone who wears glasses, I think the Premier would understand it's impossible to wear a mask and glasses for 3 hours straight in an exam. And you can't have some people wearing masks and other people who wear glasses able not to wear a mask. Otherwise, it's not a level playing field. It should be the choice of each student. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask, don't wear one. It was Nikki who brought this issue to our attention, and she's on the line. Nikki, good morning to you.
Morning, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Just take us inside the world of the HSC students who you know and how worried they are about the mask rule.
Well, look, my daughter's doing HSC, and obviously it's been a really stressful year or two with them doing, well, particularly this year, it's doing a lot of it online. So I think the mask wearing just adds to that stress and causes extra angst.
I'm wondering how Dominic Perrottet would feel if he had to sit down and, put a budget together or draft policy for 3 hours, 3.5 hours wearing glasses and a mask. He wouldn't be able to.
Exactly. No, exactly. We all know, I wear glasses, they fog up straight away once you put a mask on. So for these poor kids who are going to be stressed as it is going into an exam, they don't need to be pulling glasses on and off all the time. And to drink water, they drink water during an exam, so they've got to take the mask on and off to have a drink of water.
I see today that the King's School in Parramatta says that they will not force their secondary students to wear masks. So we just need the Premier to step in and to make a decision in time for the HSC. What would you say to Dominic Perrottet, who's listening this morning?
Well, I think he's got children. Eventually they could be in the same position. So I think he just needs to show a little bit of compassion for this group. They're doing, the New South Wales government are doing a fantastic job. But I think under this issue, they need to really think about it and think about these kids.
Nikki,
our future generation.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it to our attention and stay tuned, okay?
Thanks, Ben.
Good on you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much. So there's Nikki on the line. The Premier was listening yesterday. We got in contact with the Health Minister, Brad Hazzard, to say, listen, this is your department deciding on the rules. Are you going to have a fresh look at it? We didn't hear back from Brad Hazzard, but the Premier, Dominic Perrottet, was listening, and I believe that he is now reconsidering this decision. So if you've got students doing the HSC, let them know. Stay tuned. And if there is a change on this front, you will hear it here first. Now, we've managed to get a Service New South Wales issue fixed for one of our listeners. Josh wrote to us. He runs an air conditioning company. He says his business is owed $28,000 by the New South Wales government in job saver payments, which never came through. He tried everything, but he had no luck. It's been 7 weeks since he handed in the paperwork. Now, we involved the Minister, Victor Dominello. Josh wrote to us yesterday saying, I've woken up and received 6 emails from Service New South Wales saying I'll have the funds now within 5 days. Just wanted to thank you guys for responding to my emails, and we're very grateful. Good on you, Josh. We've got another case, though, that we're now working on. Gillian has written to us with a similar issue. She says, I'm having trouble getting my JobSaver payment from Service New South Wales. I've not received any payment from them for a month. They owe me $4,500. I desperately need the money. So, Gillian, hang in there because we are now raising your issue with Victor Dominello as well. And we thank Victor Dominello's office for their quick response.
Fan forum comments for vinomofo.com, Australia's largest online wine retailer. Great wines at epic prices, delivered and guaranteed. Enjoy responsibly.
Well, if you ask people about their experiences with the National Disability Insurance Scheme, you get mixed reports. For some, it's been a godsend. For others, a nightmare. The NDIS was established by Labor in 2013. At the time, Prime Minister Julia Gillard said it was about delivering significant benefits to Australians with disabilities. And that has happened, but as I said, there are also horror stories. The NDIS has been plagued by rorting. The most recent scam saw a group of 6 Sydney people fleece $10 million meant for the disabled, and they spent the money on themselves. Bill Shorten said in a recent speech, the NDIS has the front door padlocked to the needle and the back door wide open for crooks. The total cost of the NDIS is blown out from an initial $14 billion to about $40 billion by 2025. And while all of this is unfolding, the people who are meant to benefit from the scheme are missing out. Have a listen to the latest example. The Human Rights Commission is now investigating after an Australian aged in his 60s was denied NDIS funding. His name is Peter Frecklinton. Now, Peter lost the use of his legs after suffering polio as a child. He's been confined to a wheelchair. When the NDIS was announced in 2013, Peter thought, you beaut, finally, I can have some of my disability care provided by the government. But the devil's always in the detail. And it emerged that people over the age of 65 are ineligible. They instead would be treated under the existing aged care schemes. Peter says it's wrong. They can't help you because you have your birthday in the wrong year. Well, the Human Rights Commission seems to agree. They are now investigating whether or not this amounts to age discrimination. How many people have fallen through those cracks? We've got 4.4 million Australians with a disability. According to the Bureau of Statistics, 1.9 million of them are over the age of 65. As things stand, they are not covered by the NDIS. What happened to that promise? That the NDIS would deliver significant benefits to Australians with disabilities. Maybe Julia Gillard should have added, but only if you're under 65. The government says they can't expand the scheme for everyone. The Productivity Commission says opening up the NDIS to the over 65s would add $1 billion to the budget of the thing, but that's hardly going to make a difference. It was initially costed at $14 billion. It's now on track to hit $40 billion. What difference does another billion make if it guarantees the elderly are receiving the right care? Australians like Peter are being denied assistance, and I think that's wrong. Remember what happened to Kerry Ann Kennelly? 5 years ago, her husband John suffered a fall, but because he was over 65, he was also ineligible for the NDIS. So Kerry Ann spent $2 million out of her own pocket looking after him, and John passed away in 2019. I can tell you Kerry Ann Kennelly will never forgive the fact that her husband was considered too old to be helped by the NDIS. I would have thought people over 65 would need this scheme more than anyone else. And it's not just age-related issues. There was a camp called Camp Breakaway on the Central Coast. We had the home and away actress Penny McNamee come into the studio to say, please help us keep this open. Because it was a godsend. It helped young people with disabilities and gave their parents a bit of a rest. Camp Breakaway even had the whole setup. They had the bathrooms that were appropriate for young people in wheelchairs. They had all these other things that were there because the camp had run successfully for years. It was only when COVID hit that they had to close it down because previously they'd used the same venue for weddings and the money they got from the weddings would fund the Camp Breakaway camps. So when COVID hit, they said, look, we're going to need some help. We'll talk to the NDIS. But when I spoke personally to the ministers responsible, they said, sorry, mate, we can't help. The NDIS only assists individuals, not programs. So this amazing camp that helped young people and provided respite to their parents was axed. Is this really what we stand for? If the NDIS doesn't recognise over 65s, if the NDIS doesn't keep programs like Camp Breakaway going, there's something seriously wrong with this scheme. Our number 131873. Email ben@2gb.com and you can text 0460 873 873. We caught up with Prime Minister Scott Morrison earlier. The biggest feedback is on nuclear power, and that's why I said to the PM, why don't you muscle up to Anthony Albanese and the Greens and everyone else and take on nuclear energy? We do have a third of the world's uranium underneath our feet. The rest of the world wants it, but we're too afraid to use it. Chris says nuclear power would be as cheap as chips. It's the way to go. Ray says very obvious Scott Morrison is afraid to look at nuclear energy. I don't want Labor running the country, but I won't be voting for him anymore. Jeff says, come on, PM, stop running scared over nuclear and stand up to the scare campaign. You proved your zero emissions plan is purely political. Kelly says, have a public referendum on nuclear, let the country decide. Jim says, nuclear is a very important issue that most people support. If the PM's worried about the Labor Party, then let the people decide. Sandra says, Scott Morrison needs to take up the fight now. It will win him back voters who feel let down. Nuclear now. I know they pay attention to polls and feedback that they get through some of the research that they do. So they should be listening to this. They're mad if they don't. Jeff says the magistrate must be held responsible. Mick says, how hasn't this magistrate been stood down? It's absolutely disgraceful. No wonder these drug dealers keep on doing what they do. On the NDIS, Steve says, I'm really glad to hear you supporting the over 65s. I'm older than that, and I'm about to go to work where I'm not covered by the NDIS. It's funny, though, the ATO treats me like my age doesn't matter. I guess I do participate by funding the NDIS. Eva says, spot on, Ben, the NDIS needs major overhaul. Feedback coming in about Quinton de Kock from South Africa refusing to take a knee at the T20 Cricket World Cup, and therefore the South African cricket authorities have said if you're not going to take the knee, you don't play. So he's out. Stephen says, I've fallen out of love with professional sport. And this is exactly why. It's become too politically correct and it's very disappointing. Greg says, if our Australian team takes the knee, I'll never watch them again. We have to keep politics and sport separate. Les says, I fully support the South African player. Nobody should be bullied into doing something they don't want to do. 131873, the open line number. Now, the parents of the missing 4-year-old Cleo Smith are denying that they have any involvement in her disappearance. It's nearly 2 weeks since she vanished. She was camping with her mum and the mum's boyfriend in the northwest of WA. She disappeared from the tent without a trace. Her mother, Ellie, and her mother's boyfriend, Jake, have gone on the record to say they have no involvement in what happened with little Cleo. The Prime Minister has described the situation as heartbreaking. He's confirmed the Australian Federal Police have joined the investigation. There's a $1 million reward for any information that solves the mystery, and we're all praying for little Cleo.
Sydney's best breakfast.
2GB.
Now, when is this madness going to stop? The Sydney-based tradie Mark Harrison has been in contact with us. He can't see his dying dad because his 77-year-old dad, George, is in Queensland. George has been battling issues for the last 12 months. He's been in and out of hospital and, sadly, he's gone downhill in a major way. Mark is begging to be by his dad's side. He's applied for a border pass with Queensland Police and a quarantine exemption from Queensland Health. So we're going to see if we can speed things up for him. Mark Harrison's on the line. Good morning, Mark.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for...
What's the latest with your dad?
He's back in Harvey Bay Hospital. He's been in and out of hospital since May, where he had a fall. And I went up there, flew up there and drove up there. That was okay. And then I came back, and about a month later, he was admitted to Harvey Bay Hospital and then medevaced to the Wesley, where they treated him for a superbug they found in the back of his heart, which he picked up when he was serving in Vietnam. And once they treated that, then they found it had some liver damage. So that was the cause they're treating him now.
What are you hearing from the hospital at the moment? Is he responsive at the moment?
He was discharged out of hospital out of all that last Friday, and he was walking, and he wasn't 100%, but then he had a fall on Sunday, and my stepmum called the ambulance, and they just made the call and sent him into Harvey Bay Hospital, where they FaceTimed him, and that was the last image I have of him basically looking like a vegetable. And then I rang Queensland Health on Sunday to update his health conditions, because I'd applied for just a border pass about 6 weeks ago, but his health has gone down that quick. They just said update your portal, which we did, to say how bad his condition is now. And we haven't heard anything since Sunday. We're just waiting for a letter from the doctor to tell Queensland Health.
Mark, you need to go and see him desperately. We have contacted Queensland authorities, so let's hope that we can hit the fast forward button on this and you can go and catch up with your dad, George. So stay tuned and hopefully we'll have some news for you in the next 24 or 48 hours.
Thanks very much, Ben.
Good on you, Mark. I know time's not on your side, so it's not easy to be told, oh, well, just wait. But hopefully by us getting involved, we can speed things up a little bit. Now to the Queen. this morning, Her Majesty has been forced to cancel her planned appearance at the Glasgow Climate Summit next month. Up until this morning, the Queen's been adamant that she will be there, but Buckingham Palace says she's had to accept her doctor's advice and stay home. The 95-year-old says she's disappointed she won't be able to attend. She will instead deliver an address via video. And this comes just a week after Her Majesty spent a night in hospital for what was described as preliminary investigations. She's cancelled another trip to Northern Ireland, and people are starting to worry, and we wish Her Majesty a speedy recovery. But we also acknowledge the fact that she's 95 years of age, 96 in April next year, and we need to prepare ourselves that she's not going to be with us forever. But then again, she's bounced back before, and we can only hope and pray that she bounces back on this occasion, and we hope that she is going to recover from whatever illness she's battling right now.
You're listening to Sydney's Best Breakfast, Ben Fordham Live. And now, the US Report.
More revelations emerging from the investigation into Alec Baldwin's accidental shooting that killed a cinematographer, Helena Hutchins. Harley, good morning.
Good morning, Ben. Yeah, everybody has wanted to know, how in the world did a live bullet wind up in that gun? And the latest is that some of the crew may have been using that gun, and perhaps others, for a little off-duty target practice, which would be fun, out in the desert. If you've seen the, video, and I'm sure you have, pictures of the set, it's completely surrounded by desert. So going out there, do a little plinking, that would be a lot of fun in your off time. But it still should not result in a live round remaining in the gun, because there were people, at least two, whose job it was to make sure it was safe before rolling cameras in a scene with guns. Alec Baldwin, as everyone knows, was reportedly practicing his quick-draw moves, taking aim at a camera when the gun discharged, missed the camera, hit Ms. Hutchins and the director of the movie, Joel Souza. In a word, obviously, it should never have happened. There's also word that there was a little fanny pack full of bullets that the crew used. And it's not like this would happen, in a vacuum. They would know all about it, because out there in the desert, you start shooting live rounds, people are going to hear it. So they would know that the crew from time to time took the guns out and had a little fun. Somebody should have checked a whole lot more carefully, obviously.
Yeah, you get the feeling someone may end up going to jail over this, Harley. Is that fair to say?
Well, I think, there were two people who should have. One was the armorer, of course. She should not have put the gun on the cart until she was sure it was clear, number one. Number two, the assistant director who handed it to Alec Baldwin clearly didn't look at it, because it only takes a second or so to make sure that it's unloaded, and he didn't do it. So there are two people there who should have, and whose job it was to make sure that the gun was clear, was safe. That wouldn't be voluntary manslaughter, but it could certainly be involuntary. They didn't do it on purpose, naturally. I thought the key source of the information that's been so interesting in this, in what's going on, has been the police search warrant, because it describes the scope of the ongoing investigation, and as it constantly expands the probe, then they constantly update the search warrant, and reporters can see it. So that's where we're learning all this stuff. Very interesting.
Now, Harley, we lean on you from time to time with animal-related issues. Usually we're talking about brown bears. You've got an animal on the loose. Is this one another bear?
No, this one has stripes. Lots of people have horses, zebras, not so many. In Louisiana, the owners of I don't know why you'd want to own a zebra. They're famously irritable. They're not, they're not horses. But the owners of a zebra say the animal apparently didn't like the new pasture they had all set up for him, and he bolted. Lots of folks in DeSoto Parish got a look at him, of course, as he went by. And, of course, they took cell phone pictures and video of him. One woman posted a photo of Facebook showing this, this guy standing on the back stairs of a neighbor's home. Now, that'd be a shock. You look out your window, and there's a zebra. His name is Zydeco, named for some of the music that they make down there. Once they found out where he was, the owners went and got him. No big deal, except seeing a zebra prancing around Louisiana is unusual and kind of cool.
There's all sorts of weird things that happen around Louisiana. We'll catch you tomorrow, Harley.
Right, thanks a lot,
The
man.
one and only Harley Carnes joining us from the United States. Now, Wayne, you've got an issue that's happening around Randwick. What is it, Wayne?
Yes, good morning, Ben. Last night we had 3 helicopters do a run over our buildings. I'm in Randwick on the 7th floor. So So we've got 8 floors here, and they're about 100 metres over the building. So they come through at midnight, they do kind of a loop, turn around and come straight back. And in the daytime they do it as well. I'm just wondering why they're doing it at that time of night, why they're flying so low, and it scares my children when they come in at night, wakes the whole house up, doesn't shake the building, but you get the rumble, and with your good contacts, I'm sure you could find out, but it's very disturbing.
Yeah, Wayne, I think they're just dropping in to say a little hello.
Well, they've done it in the daytime, and we've got 2 French girls that sunbake in the pool downstairs, and there was one day last week they were hovering over the pool, and I walked out onto my balcony and gave them the shove-o, and they flew off. But on the same day, and yesterday they were flying around. But, should they be flying that low at that time of night or even in the daytime?
Oh, well, look, they've got to train in all conditions. And, look, Shane has just sent a text saying, what's the address there in Randwick? He wants to drop by and have a closer look. No, don't give me the address. Wayne, we'll see what's going on. I suspect that they're training exercises and they have to do them in all places and in all conditions. They do them at daytime, they do them at night time, they do them in rural settings, they do them in city settings. It's just the way they do. And obviously they do it because they want to make sure that they are prepared just in case. So if it gave you a bit of a wake-up or scared the kids or the French backpackers, then I'm sure they'd pass on their sincere apologies. Well, things are exploding on the wharves. We predicted this. The leading terminal operator, Patrick, has pretty much declared war on the Maritime Union. Patrick has approached the Fair Work Commission and applied to terminate their worker enterprise agreement. So this is a significant step. They're seeking permission to take complete control of the workforce. We spoke last week with the Patrick CEO, Michael Josevich. He says enough is enough. We've offered a 10% pay increase over the next 4 years. We're at the end of the road. And good on him. This is badly damaging the reputation of his business and this country. According to the Fin Review, Patrick is attempting to end decades of union control on the wharves, but only because the unions were asking for things that were entirely unreasonable. And just remember the scenes from the 90s when John Howard was involved. Peter Reith was the Industrial Relations Minister. And companies said, look, we're not going to be held to ransom by unions. So they kicked them off. Well, this could happen all over again. Negotiations have dragged on for 18 months. Patrick has met with the union 70 times. The average wharfie earns $170,000 a year and works less than 200 days a year. They're demanding that 40% of new hires come from family and friends, so jobs for mates. Patrick says they won't agree to this ridiculous demand, and nor should they. And it's been made harder because a rival company complied. They rolled over. Hutchison agreed to hire family and friends of the wharfies early this year. Well, of course, the union then thinks, OK, well, Hutchison agreed, so Patrick will too. Well, no, not so fast. Patrick says no, forget about it. This comes as wharfies threaten a new round of strikes in Melbourne and Sydney. They're planning to walk off the job for 24 hours on Melbourne Cup Day, which is convenient. There are also 12-hour daily strikes in Melbourne from next week. In Sydney, there are stop works at Port Botany at 5 a.m, 1 p.m. and 9 p.m. every single day. The wharfies think they run the show. Well, that may end if Patrick gets its way at the Fair Work Commission.
You're listening to Sydney's Best Breakfast. Ben Fordham Live. And now, the UK Report.
Well, concerns are growing for Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. She has now decided to resume some of her duties via video, but she has cancelled a planned attendance to the Glasgow Climate Summit. Adam Gilchrist, good morning to you.
Yes, good morning. She's going to present her address to delegates. I guess it'll be right at the start of things on Sunday with a recorded video message instead. Now, I suppose it's always easy in royal circles to read things in, but listen, on the face of it, it doesn't look that great. We were told that she just needed to take a bit of time off. She was actually in hospital. We were told she would just go back and recuperate. She cancelled the trip to Northern Ireland. We were told she'd resumed her duties and indeed had met a couple of ambassadors via video link, and then they announced that she was not going to attend the summit in Glasgow. So sort of give with one hand, take with the other. She's 95. You know, you can't take things for granted, but given that we were told there were preliminary investigations in hospital, you wonder if maybe there's just something afoot and they can't really tell us. And therefore we are beginning to leap to conclusions, aren't we?
Yeah, 95 years of age. She turns 96 on April 21 next year. So we can only hope that she's going to be okay, but we've also got to prepare ourselves. She's not going to be around forever. None of us are. Now, surely this is a joke. These climate protesters who keep on blocking motorways, they're saying to drivers, look, do us a favour and take another route.
Yes. Stay out of our way, because we want to protest and not have drivers confront us. And, oh boy, we had some confrontations. There was an extraordinary one, went viral on Monday, which was a guy who was taking his dad for cancer treatment and couldn't get through with these protesters in the way, and he absolutely let rip at them. And wouldn't we all, given those circumstances? Well, the government has now got a nationwide injunction, so if any of them turn up at junctions, as it were, then they can immediately be arrested and hauled off to jail because they'd be breaking the injunction. Except, of course, when it comes to protesting, that doesn't really do it, because the protesting and blocking a road in the first place is illegal. So they've now issued this statement saying that they plan to block a whole series of parts of the notorious M25 motorway going around London, which is, I believe, still Europe's busiest motorway, if not the world's, and exactly which parts they'll turn up, but they've told us 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, so roughly speaking in, 10 hours' time or so, they will be out there, and we should stay away. Blooming cheek! I can't think for one moment people are going to stay away, but we might have some more confrontations to report.
Yeah, well, you know my theory. If they superglue themselves to the road, just leave them there and use the world's strongest superglue. As long as it doesn't interrupt your journey to us tomorrow, then that's just fine. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning.
Cheers, Ben.
Adam Gilchrist joining us from the UK. Now, we've got a big weekend of racing in Sydney. On Saturday, the Golden Eagle at Rose Hill, $7.5 million in prize money. But it's not just the owners that win the money. Charities will too. Because every horse owner chooses a charity. If their horse wins, 10% of the prize money goes to the charity. A great initiative by Racing New South Wales and Peter V'landys. Charities like Ronald McDonald House, the Sydney Children's Hospital, the Ricky Stewart Foundation, Camp Quality. And I'm thrilled to see that the Fordham Foundation is in the mix. That's not my retirement fund. The Fordham Foundation was set up by my dad to raise awareness and money for research into head and neck cancer. So keep an eye out for Exoboom. If Exoboom does well, so does the Fordham Foundation. Now, is it any chance the Ray Hadley Morning Show coming up? Ray knows a thing or two about horse racing. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning. It's going to be a hard race to win, but the good news is that of the 7.5 million, 750,000 goes to the various charities. So every one of the charities, including the Fordham Foundation, will be the beneficiary of some of the prize money, 10% of what the horse gets. And it'll be lovely to get the 410,000. I think it's 4.1 million for horse. But look, all the charities, including your dad's, are very worthy. I've had various associations with all of them at different stages, and it's just a wonderful initiative. I mean, it's a feel-good day. There are still tickets left, only a few hundred general admission tickets for 10,000 capacity at Rose Hill. But it's just a really feel-good day. A great race, the Golden Eagle, invented by Peter V'landys and Racing New South Wales, with this rather unusual twist of charities benefiting from the runners, and some of the Snowdens who've got your horse, the one going for the Fordham Foundation, Exoboom. They've got others there as well, including up towards the top, AIM. Joseph Pride's represented. Gay and Adrian represented, Mick Price and Michael Kent, Gerald Ryan's there, Annabelle Neeson, of course, whose horse was scratched from the Cox Plate on the morning of the race. She's got a couple of runners, actually. And the Freedmans are well represented as well. I think Richard and Michael have a couple of runners. So all in all, it'll be a great day of racing. There's a one from the bush. Robert and Luke Price trained Count the Rupee, and it's from the south coast of New South Wales. So all in all, there'll be a winner, and there'll be a second and a third, but there'll be 750 grand given to charities, which is a wonderful initiative.
Great idea. Now, great news. We are officially allowed to leave Australia without an exemption from next week. So, the long-awaited honeymoon with Sophie, where are you going to take her overseas? Paris, Rome,
Barara,
Switzerland, Hawaii,
Barara,
London.
We may even get north of Barara. We might get to Brooklyn. Now, I'll tell you the first place I'm going next Tuesday. I'm going north to see my 4 grandchildren, including the one I've never met, little Lola. I've had a look at her this morning on FaceTime again, and she's now, 6 weeks old, I suppose, maybe 7 weeks old, and I haven't met her yet. So, do you reckon the regional travel is going to be brought forward to this weekend or not? I've got a meeting with Dominic Perrottet. If not brought forward, it'll be Monday at the latest. Otherwise, he'll be in a hammerlock by the time he finishes the meeting. Because Ava, on FaceTime this morning, you'll love this, little Avie, she said, her mother's in the room, and she says, Poppy. I said, what? She said, Macca's.
She wants the soft serve.
I think Mummy's listening.
Yeah. Well, we hope it happens for you, and everyone can't wait to get away. We'll be listening after 9, Ray.
See you, pal.
Good on you. Listen out for Carl Webb, by the way, the Queensland Origin legend, because he's got a major fight on his hands with motor neurone disease, an issue close to Ray's heart. Carl Webb coming up on the Ray Hadley Morning Show. 131873, the open line number. Michael's called in to talk about the exemptions that are no longer needed to leave the country, I think. Hello, Michael. How are you?
Good, mate. Did you say from today you don't need an exemption?
Yeah, that's right. You no longer need an exemption if you're booking an overseas flight.
Whoa, mate, this is getting better and better. Fully vaccinated and ready to go tomorrow. I'm out of here, baby. I'm out of here. I'm going to book it. I'm going to go book it today.
Where are you going, mate? Where are you going to go to?
Oh, I'm just going to Istanbul to Turkey.
Well, you've got to wait until November 1 until you fly, but you can book it today, all right?
Yeah, I'll book it today. I'm out of here on Monday, mate. See you later.
Michael, you sound like a lot of fun. Have you got a +1? Do you want to take someone with you or fly business class?
No, I'm all right. I've got an economy, but I mean, you'll still have fun. You know, we need a break, mate.
Oh, bloody oath, Michael. Well said. Thank you. Thank you, podcaster, for listening into the Ben Fordham podcast. Is podcaster a word? It is now. Just so you know, we have a full show podcast and a highlights podcast. So I don't know whether you're a full show type of person or a highlights type of person, but let me introduce something else to you as well. Every weekend at around midday on Saturday, we release the weekend highlights of Ben Fordham Live, also through your favourite podcast avenue, whatever that might be. Anyway, thank you for listening to the podcast. We'll catch you again soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.